Coming up on Currently, Beth Milligan shares updates on plans for a new justice center in Traverse City, and Art Bukowski from Traverse City Business News goes inside the life of local judges. Plus, we talk TCAPS, manufacturing, and magnets. Oh my. That's all coming up on Currently. Welcome to Currently, where we discuss some of the top local stories directly from the journalists who are covering them. I'm your host, Crystal Frost. Now, this podcast was recorded on Thursday, September 11th. The Tigers are 84-62 with a magic number of 8, baby. That said, things may change by the time you are watching or listening. Support for Currently comes from Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings, located on South Garfield Avenue in Traverse City. It's home fashion elevated. And from West Shore Bank. When you choose West Shore Bank, you are not just choosing a bank. You are choosing a partner committed to the well-being of our community. Visit them today on 8th Street or at westshorebank.com. Support also comes from the Coin Slot Arcade Bar in Traverse City. It's a chill hangout with a full bar in a low-key setting. Welcome to show, I think, number 32, head writer for the Traverse City Ticker. It's Beth Milligan.
Hello.
You've been here for all 32 episodes.
I have.
Oh, man,
I haven't even been here for all 32 episodes.
I think I've got one on you.
You do.
Wait, who's
she was
who
gone
hosts
for
with
one
you?
show.
I was gone for one show because I was in the hospital.
So Beth hosted?
So she
Yeah.
hosted.
How exciting.
It was amazing. It was
I put her in the hospital so that I could take over the show. No, I'm
I
just
like to
kidding.
picture her going back and forth and having a dialogue with herself.
It was a little all about Eve situation.
she did a fantastic job. I healed up real quick.
Yes.
Of course, this is Art Bukowski from Eyes Only Media, representing the Traverse City Business News today. You've got the 40 Under 40 edition.
Yes, people love the 40 Under 40 edition. We've been doing this for a lot of years here in the business news, and I like to tell everybody, take the opportunity that Eyes Only Media, who Beth and I both work for, is the business news, the Ticker, the Leelanau Ticker, and the Northern Express. So we bring to you all those wonderful publications every week, every month. It's a very exciting thing to do. Beth being our lead writer for the Ticker, and myself and Craig Manning, the other staff writers, write for all 4 of the publications. But I just like to educate people, since not a lot of people know about the structure of their favorite local periodicals.
And you know, the business news is not just about business.
No, it's not. And I tell people that all the time, and thanks for that wonderful setup. I always like to put stories in here that, in fact, all of us writers put stories in here that have interest to the general public. And I sometimes feel bad that people might not pick it up because, like, well, I'm not a business person. I'm like, there's all kinds of fun stuff in here. A good story is a good story regardless of what the topic is.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff. So grab it from the newsstand next time.
Especially with the 40 Under 40.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
there's usually
Yes.
some people that you'll recognize from there, and they talk about things that inspire them. There's usually other people who have given like feedback about them or talked about why they make a difference in the community. So
Yes.
it's kind of interesting
Yeah.
to read about people who are doing things in TC.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
It's a
Movers and
great
shakers,
issue.
and they're
Yeah.
all young, and here I
Yes.
am over here. Just,
They're gathered right now for their little soiree.
Are they really?
Yes, I can't remember. It's the Haggerty
goodness.
Garage this year. They're whining and dining. You know.
And I'll tell you, as someone who was a 40 Under 40
that's right.
recipient a few times,
14-time winner.
also before Beth working.
I was the youngest ever.
What were you,
No,
like
I don't
5?
know if that record has changed. I was like 22.
Interesting.
Back in the day when I was running the Young Professionals program for Traverse Connect, I was not working for the media company.
Yes.
And I have since become ineligible, of course, because
Right.
I
Yes.
work for the company, and also I'm old.
Which is, yeah, I mean, you're not old. You're barely 40. But I remember I was on the list a couple of times, and it was a lot of fun, and it became kind of interesting because you would get on the list one year, and then it was like, oh, is this going to happen for me again?
Yeah.
And then it would do another year and another
Yeah.
year, and it almost felt like you had to be on the list every year.
And then
Which
if you
I think
fell
is-
off, you'd just be
Yeah.
like,
yeah.
I think
Just
it's
hide
like
for a year.
it's like a lot of pressure for people who are repeats, you know?
Well, as somebody who never got on the 40 Under 40 list, I just simply can't relate, ladies.
it's not bitter at all.
Wow. Well, maybe they'll change up the rules.
No.
They'll do like, you know.
Now I work for the company and I'm 67, so we're just not.
We'll just move on.
that dream is dead.
I have to ask you, how many times do you hear from people, there should be a 60 over 60?
God.
80 over
All the
80.
time.
Yes.
All
There aren't
the
even 80 people
time.
over 80.
I know. And also, you've had your moment in the sun. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I love our seniors, but
Yeah.
let
Relax.
the youth have a moment.
Just
Right. Even
relax.
and all of us, well, we are over the age of 40.
Yeah.
You are over the age of 40. So, I mean, we're not bitter over here.
Yeah, we're just doing our own thing now.
We're just doing our thing. And speaking of our thing, we are going to get into Journalism. Yes, exactly. We're going to start with you, Art. And for this edition of the Business News, you wrote a really great sort of inside the chambers of local judges here in Northern Michigan. And you wrote about the 86th District Court. You wrote about the 13th District Circuit Court.
Yep.
Thank you. You talked about the differences between the two. You talked about caseload. Can you kind of take us through like this sort of law 101 of how district versus circuit court works and things like that?
Yes. So basically, and this is an overgeneralization, but not really, district court is for minor offenses, misdemeanors, which is up to a year in jail, minor infractions, and circuit court is where felonies are processed, although it all starts in district court.
Okay.
So everything starts off in district court. Stuff has to be bound over to circuit court, but district court is really a high volume court. So traffic citations, violations, stuff like that get processed there, which are just civil infractions. Misdemeanors.
Lawsuits?
Small claims lawsuits.
Okay.
Anything over $25,000 goes up to circuit court. So circuit court, which is your big red courthouse here, that's the serious stuff, essentially. Sometimes it'll get remanded back down, but district court and circuit court, serious, and then serious at circuit court, a little bit more minor at district court. Again, that's all relative. I mean, everything's big to the people that are going through them. And then both the circuit and the district cover 3 counties in our region. It's Antrim, Leelanau, and Grand Traverse. That may change. Antrim wants out, but that's the gist of it. And there's 2 judges, 2 district judges, and 2 circuit judges that handle all of this stuff, among some other folks that do some of the proceedings, magistrates and stuff. But they have a lot on their plate.
And I will just add real quickly that, of course, we think of like courts, we usually think of criminal cases, which is kind of what Art's talking about. But as a journalist who covers like the city commission, 13th Circuit Court is where like a lot of the civil lawsuits go through. So anytime like the city is getting sued or we're dealing with the Fish Pass lawsuit, the tall building lawsuit, some of the big issues in Traverse City, that's where I go to 13th Circuit Court for those issues.
And that's the big red brick building.
That's the big red brick building. And it used to... All the operations used to be there. In fact, circuit and district, everything used to be in that building not all that long ago. Now they've split off, and they have the beautiful Hall of Justice, which is actually 2 fused churches. It's really clever where a lot of the district court is, but even circuit court administration is over there now. Or not administration, some of the records are over there. But they have that whole campus, which is known for, if nothing else, just horrible parking. But in fact,
and more. We'll talk about that later.
Yes. But and this was one of those stories I just did for my time at the Record Eagle. I spent a lot of time over there, and I always just found it fascinating what these guys did. So that's one of the things I like about my job now is I just told Luke, hey, I'm going to do a story about these judges. He's like, all right. So I did.
And it was really fascinating because, they take their jobs very seriously. As they should.
Very seriously.
You were talking to Judge Hamlin, and he was basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he was talking about how, he may have had a very full docket all day, case after case after case after case. And it's 4:30 on a Monday, and he's tired.
Yeah.
But he's got to bring the same energy he did on his first case because for that person standing in front of him, that's their first case.
Yeah, and he had another great quote in there too. Is a fantastic. In my line of work, Beth's line of work, there's nothing better than people that know what they're talking about but are also very quotable. And he said he had another quote in the story that's like, do I want to read a 75-page brief? Probably not. But what if there's something important on page 73?
Yeah.
And he feels, they all do, but Charlie in particular, Judge Hamlin, you can tell just really feels the pressure of, these are people's lives at stake, especially at that level. These are felony cases. There's prison time at stake. These are major lawsuits with lots of money at stake. And it's on them to be prepared, especially for a lot of these. That's the misconception the story gets into a lot. It's not necessarily a misconception, but there's the jury trials people see on TV. A lot of these are just bench trials. It's the judge deciding. And so the judge has to know what he's talking about, has to do all of his research, because when it comes time to actually be in court, there's a lot on the line.
Yeah, there's a lot.
A lot on the line. And these guys really feel the responsibility. It was very clear to me, too, that it was not just lip service. They put in the time.
I'm really fascinated by the fact that, realistically, there are just a few judges doing this for 3 counties now. And,
for sure.
In my day job, I work in criminal justice, and I work on the parole side of things. And so I know that we're busy with people who are getting out after committing felonies and getting out of prison. I can't imagine when you add all of that together, how many, the docket and then the caseloads for the probation officers, for the parole officers, for the sobriety court, which is another piece of this. Community corrections, like all these things that you have these programs in these areas. And there's really just a few people at the top.
Yeah.
And I think what's cool about our story, first of all, I'll just mention we had a story in August, which is very recently, Ticker, that we may be getting another probate circuit judge.
Yeah.
We have been identified by the Michigan Supreme Court, which looks at the number of judges throughout the state every couple of years and says, this community doesn't have enough. This has too many.
Yep.
So we may get another one. But what I thought was cool about our story, again, as a journalist for many, many years, I actually very rarely, if ever, interview the judges. Typically, I quote them often because I'm in their courtrooms and I'm looking at their rulings. But they typically like to let their rulings speak for themselves. They don't often, for example, after a case, go out. You might see that in a movie, but they don't like to really tell the media like what they were thinking. They like to let their rulings really think for themselves and be thoughtful. Therefore, so Art to get to kind of have to do a behind the scenes of what they are like and what their workloads are. It's a really unique perspective because we don't often hear from them.
What was one really surprising thing that you found out while, being able to, I'm just kind of obsessed with the fact that you got to go in the judges' chambers and like see where they do their deliberating and that kind of stuff.
I guess I would say the time. They're routinely putting in 60, 70 hours a week, and it's just because it has to happen. Because their dockets are literally filled up to the point where all day essentially they're doing proceedings, and they have some time in the afternoon, especially the district judges. But then that ends up being administrative. You heard Judge Cooney talk about that in the story, but they put in a lot of time because they have to, and to be prepared. Sometimes it's over the nights and weekends. They're reading briefs and stuff like that, but they all know that going into it. One of the biggest surprises, period, in this entire town was when Charlie ran. There was two for years and years. There was Judge Tom Power and Judge Phil Rogers were the two circuit court judges for 100 years. When Rogers retired, it's a big time job, and when Power retired, I thought for sure there'd be a lot of people interested. Charlie ran unopposed.
Wow.
And part of the reason is because it's a lot of work to do it. You think it's a nice prominent position. It's something that people respect and look up to, which they do, but there's a massive amount of work that has to happen. And these guys say that we knew that going into it. This is not an easy job time-wise.
Nobody becomes a judge because it's cushy.
Yeah, and it's just not that. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of pressure. And again, both of them spoke to the fact that they constantly remind themselves, that person down there, everything rides on this moment for them. So it's like we have a responsibility to do what we got to do. But, it's also, there's also a lot of busy work. That's the other thing. And the other thing, it's crazy. And this was also fascinating. And I only touched on, I think it's hard about a story like that is about half of it got in and half of the other stuff. Like I can't have a 5,000 word story. You got to pare it down.
Yep.
But we talk more and more about AI and how that's changing things. And Charlie in particular was like, Art, like we have a situation now where any piece of evidence that's admitted in court, defense or the prosecution could very reasonably say is fake. Any signed document, any video, anything. It has the potential to completely upend the justice system. Because before we had a situation where it's like, well, we found this document, we have this video, boom, open and shut. That's what it is. Now, everything is under question. And not just in the way that all court cases were. There's just, the ones that go to trial are the ones that there's a legitimate case on both sides. The easy ones settle or get pled out. We're going to have situations now where it's terrifying because just like we as the general public can't discern fact from fiction, a jury is going to have to look at that and say, is that real? And that is effed up. I'm sorry, but it's scary.
So anyways, it's just all walking to the ocean. It's all
a scary
terrible.
thing. But it impacts them too. And then the other thing I'll mention too is interesting is they've moved, the post-COVID legacy is a lot of this has moved to virtual stuff now. So they started by necessity having virtual hearings. I'm sure everybody's seen the guy where he couldn't turn the cat face filter off in court. Legendary. But a lot of that in the wake of COVID has remained. Stuck around, which has been, it has pros and cons, which again are discussed in the story.
So, I mean, you should get a copy of the Traverse City Business News. You know, get a nice hefty copy like Art is showing you. You can also subscribe online, and you know it's a very reasonable. It's all local, and you know you get really great insight.
You get good stories. Even somebody who's never touched business could enjoy half the stories in there every month.
I love that. We're going to take, kind of do the same sort of conversation right now as we move to Beth's story.
Yeah, they're very connected.
They're very connected. Sure. And I think that this was done by design. So well done. We're going to talk a little bit about the new justice facility or justice center that the county is looking at. This is kind of we've talked about this before. There is a need for a new jail in Grand Traverse County. I don't think anyone can deny it at this point.
It's a dump.
But tell us about what county commissioners have already discussed, what they are planning to discuss, and what we might see with this.
Yeah, so county commissioners in April had unanimously approved a resolution of support for moving forward in the process to construct a new jail. We have been talking about a new jail for probably at least 20 years.
I mean, since even the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for forever and ever.
I remember the 90s.
The existing jail that we have on Washington Street was built in 1964. It was originally designed to hold 85 inmates. We now are averaging somewhere in the 150 range.
Wow.
We're boarding a lot of inmates out in neighboring counties because we don't have the room for them in Grand Traverse County Jail. We also have some issues with the structure of that jail. We had some tenting in the floor happen this summer that required in the lobby a temporary closure of the jail.
It does sound expensive.
Even just to try to figure out what is happening with it is expensive.
And
that
it wasn't a sinkhole. We know that.
No, not a sinkhole. They're measuring some of the stress factors right now. They have measuring equipment on the building. That's a $110,000 contract though, just to evaluate the building's structural integrity. It's not a building really that, because of the age and the way it's laid out, just built decades ago, the way that we design jails has changed. Just renovating that existing facility is not going to be enough. So the county commission is in the process now of starting to plan for a new jail. But as they were doing that, they really wanted to look more holistically at a campus, like a larger criminal justice complex. And examples of entities that could be in that complex would be the jail, but the sheriff's office really wants to be with the jail. They're at Woodmere right now, but they'd like to be with, they have a lot of the shared staff. The courts, the Traverse City Police Department, the prosecutor's office, the Michigan State Police even potentially could be there. And so there's a couple locations where they could do that. The obvious one is Boardman, Washington. Right. The campus that Art was just, interviewing at and talking about where our historic courthouses are. We also have the prosecutor's office is already there. A lot of the county departments are there, records, that kind of thing. You could potentially bring the TCPD and sheriff's office over from Woodmere to this campus. If you think about the two courthouses with the big parking lot in between them, there's a possibility of completely redesigning that whole campus, including the governmental center, which both the county and city that jointly own that building have talked about.
That's old too, baby.
So just look at this thing as a puzzle that you can potentially pick the pieces up and move them around. Where you have the parking lot now, you could build a whole new building on top of that. Bring the jail down, demolish it, build a new one. So there's a lot of possibility there. The other possibility is Lafreniere, where the county owns a lot of land and has the health department and some of its other offices out there. It already has a planned expansion on that campus. The challenge with building on Lafreniere is the Traverse City Police Department couldn't be located there because they have to be in the city of Traverse City. Under state law, the city of Traverse City is also the county seat for Grand Traverse County, which means some elected officials like the sheriff have to be in the county seat.
Interesting.
We would have to change the county seat to Garfield Township to allow, for example, the prosecutor and the sheriff to move there. So there's some challenges with that. I think the TCBD and sheriff's office would like to be co-located. So these are all considerations. Right. Now it's bigger than just a jail. It's how do we bring all of these departments together in one complex where they could potentially all work together. So the conversation this week, there's a committee of commissioners that has been looking at this issue along with Judge Charlie, as Art would call him, old Charlie, the sheriff, directors of parks and facilities, John Chase. A lot of different folks are on this committee. They are going to be looking going forward at forming two kind of community committees. One is really focused on community input, talking to all the people who might have opinions about what a new jail should look like. We're talking about people in mental health, people who deal with incarceration, MDOC, all of these groups, and then a technical committee, which is really just focused more on the physical structure of the jail. How much is it going to cost? How many beds do we need? What do we have a juvenile facility? All of these things. And in the coming months, these two committees will be getting community input with helps of consultants, with the goal of eventually together perhaps coming to a recommended location and idea of what this facility might look like. And then you got to get into the funding, which is a whole other piece of the puzzle.
I'm going to volunteer as tribute to be on that committee because I would also like to see, realistically, some reentry housing because you have plenty of people who are getting out of jail and they are homeless.
Yeah.
And there's really no reentry plan. I know the city and the county have done a great job of bringing in people to try to help people who are moving after incarceration of what does that look like? But housing is not available, And so, just personally, I'm like, that should be a topic of conversation too. There's plenty of jail alternative programs and a lot of them relied on recovery homes that are no longer in existence. ATS has closed all 5 of their recovery homes. So where are people going?
Yeah.
After they've been arrested, they've been in jail, they've served time, or they're doing a jail alternative program like a sobriety court, and then there's no sober living.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a tough situation right now.
And if you're not from the jail world, there is so much that happens in jails that a lot of times people don't think about or know about that go into planning what a jail looks like. Simple things that keeping male and female population separated. But even this week, there were some, people with jail expertise talking at the county commission meeting. And it used to be in the past that, about 4% of prisoners were female. And now it's more in the third range. And oftentimes dealing with things like pregnancy. So you have to have, jail
Medical
cells
staff.
that are medically equipped, the right kind of staff. You have people who are in different states of sobriety coming into jail or might be detoxing, might have different health, medical, or physical needs. So these are all things that go into jail. So it's not just let's throw some beds in there, make sure we can throw people in a cell. There's programming that goes into it. Are we going to be focused more on rehabilitation and diversion, or are we just holding people for a long time?
Sure.
All of the way that you think about a jail functioning determines what will ultimately build.
Yeah, it is so much more than what you probably remember from those old 1960s shows where it's just like a bed and behind bars.
One sheriff who's just staring at you.
And the sheriff is always there, just
you got the guy
dangling
rattling the cup on he's got the bars.
It's not that It really isn't. And they have so many things that they have to work, to worry about, really. Because it is the responsibility of the county to take care of the folks at that point.
Yeah. So I would say if you're someone who's interested in this topic, that it is certainly one that's going to be coming up again and again in the months to come.
Right.
But I would say, it's rare, having covered this commission, this particular embodiment of the commission, but just the commission for a long time, to have, unanimous bipartisan support on an issue. The board's pretty divided politically. So I would say that, even though we've had a lot of discussions in the past about the jail, there does seem to be the political will on this commission to really try to move the project forward.
Yeah, which is a good thing. I think once the ground starts to crumble beneath you, that's the sign.
Yeah, once your floor is popping up, it might.
There's tremors coming up. That's what I'm always afraid of. That's what I'm always afraid of.
Talk about Kevin Bacon tremors?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Totally afraid of that.
What a classic.
Oh my gosh. Well, coming up, we are going to talk about magnets, manufacturing, and TCAPS. That's all ahead. But right now, a word for our lead sponsor, Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings. And you know what time of year it is in northern Michigan right now? It's local summer. It's that little window after the busy tourist season when the crowds slow down, the weather is still beautiful, and it feels like the community is all ours again. And honestly, I think it might be the best time of year. And at Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings, they're celebrating local summer in style. The team has refreshed the entire store inside and out with the very latest in fall home fashion. So if you've been thinking about updating your space, like adding a cozy new sofa, maybe a dining set just in time for holiday gatherings, now is the perfect time to stop in and see what's new. But here's the part that really makes me smile. Throughout the entire month of September, a portion of every single purchase goes right back into our community through Northwestern Michigan College. That's Golden-Fowler supporting NMC, and it's all of us supporting each other. So come in, celebrate local summer with us, and find furniture you'll love to come home to. Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings, right on Garfield Avenue in Traverse City. Welcome back to Currently, and we are going to shift gears here, entering the world of world magnets and manufacturing with Art Bukowski. World Magnets.
World Magnetics.
World Magnetics.
Which has been over at Hastings since 1962. Yeah, really interesting company.
It really has?
Yes, and so the reason I picked this story to talk about is because this town has so much crazy under-the-radar manufacturing that nobody ever talks about. Grand Traverse Plastics, there is not a single General Motors car that comes out of the line that doesn't have at least 2 Grand Traverse Plastics components in it. World Magnetics is shipping, they got stuff in space and astronaut helmets. I mean, so why are we not talking about this some more? And a lot of these are small, family-owned companies that do almost all of it, like World Magnetics. So despite their name, and it's actually an interesting story, they make almost exclusively pressure switches.
So they don't make magnets?
They don't really do any of that anymore. They were in a business. Back in the day, credit cards used to have these magnetic readers.
Yeah.
Don't be old enough to remember those. But when they had those magnetic, because we all kind of remember those.
I remember those.
Yeah. So they were in that business until about 25 years ago, when they really moved into these pressure switches. And long and short of it is pressure switches are like they sound. They're a small device that triggers a change based on pressure and air or fluid or anything, and they're everywhere. They're in your car. They're in pop machines. There's bazillions of different applications for these and machines. And World Magnetics, by the time they switched over to pressure switches, they already had 35 whatever years it was in business as World Magnetics. Really good reputation. They just decided to not change. So they're doing pressure switches despite their name. But they, again, like I said, I mean, they've got these things in nuclear submarines. They've got them in space. Raytheon, NASA, their client list is huge.
Wow. They're
all building these things from scratch from the raw materials over there in Hastings. And again, they're just one of these players in town. Promethean, these guys are making these heated stadium seats. I don't even really need to talk so much about Britton Banners and Tencraft and places like that. But even then, like Britton has got contracts with every single major player, NFL, and it's just crazy the stuff that's happening in manufacturing. RM Young Company, also over the industrial park, they're making these high-end weather instruments that are used around the world. They're one of the top manufacturers of these in the country, and they're doing it right here in Traverse City. And then you go back to Parsons and what he was doing and basically inventing integrated machine stuff. There's a ton of history here, a ton of activity here, and it just doesn't get talked about, which is
but it's everywhere. And, if you go to worldmagnetics.com, you can see that, like, one of their first things that you see is an espresso machine.
Yeah.
So, like, there it is, like a pressure switcher in your espresso machine.
You interact with pressure switches probably a dozen times a day, if not more, and you just don't know it because they're in various machines that you're dealing with. And World Magnetics, they're not the largest producer of pressure switches, but they're one of the largest custom producers. So what that means is people will come to them with difficult solutions. They'll be able to custom build pressure switches specifically for applications.
Wow.
And that's really where they've made their niches. They're not the biggest, but they are the best at finding solutions. Really interesting owner, this guy named Martin Paul. He's from the UK, came over, started working with the company, ended up buying it. It's been a family-owned company for 1 million years. He's got this neat photo on his desk of him and the wife of the original founder who brought the company back here in 1962. She just showed up one day. They walked around and got a tour, and he got a picture with her. And he just feels this tremendous responsibility as the current caretaker of this company. He kept talking about it that way. Interesting people, interesting company. But an interesting scene in Traverse City. There's just a lot of this manufacturing that nobody ever seems to talk about.
I feel like there's certain corridors of Traverse City. Hastings is one.
Hastings is one.
Cass Road is another. Out on like Rennie 31,
well, there's the industrial parks.
Where the industrial parks are.
Yep.
But it's like, I mean, we kind of like if you've been in Traverse City a long time, for example, Sara Lee is a big employer, but you never like really see them because they're tucked back there off Cass.
Right.
Or just like you're talking about all these companies. I'm like, I drive Hastings all the time, but I'm like, I'm like, who are these companies?
They're all there.
Like,
they're employing hundreds of people.
Yeah.
I wanted to do a larger story about it. The problem you get with a lot of them is, and Beth will appreciate this, is the bigger the company is, they kick you up to corporate when you want to talk to them. And I'm just not interested in talking to corporate. I want to talk to somebody here because a lot of the local companies have been bought out by larger players. So companies that were local are now local entities or local units of a larger company that has bought them out. So that has happened over the years. But yeah, you've got the several big industrial parks, the airport industrial park, and then across 3 Mile there's the Aero Park, that big industrial park.
Hammond, Meadowlands, there's all
Hammond,
kinds.
There's all kinds of them. There's all kinds of interesting work happening. So I'm going on at this point.
In manufacturing, I mean, it always in need of people to work in manufacturing, and it's become so much more sophisticated now.
Huge.
You know, I think it used to be looked at as if you had a job in manufacturing, you know, you had a factory job and you were just kind of doing the same sort of thing. It's so different now.
And I could consume 3 whole currentlies with my thoughts on that because it's a needed thing. My parents, if you look at the history of it, my parents' generation, the boomers, were the first to be told you need a college education and have that be tied to value or worth or something. We somehow got away from skilled trades. It is now the most important thing you could do is tell your kids to get into skilled trades because the jobs are so in demand. Companies are almost crippled by lack of employees. They pay well. They need them. You can make a good living and you can have way less debt. I can't tell you how many companies I talked to as part of the business news who over the past year and a half have been concerned and are now basically almost at alarm bell status saying we are going to have to close portions of our operations because we can't find staff.
Right. And I mean, hopefully we get back to that sort of tradition too of where, these types of companies, I know so many in Traverse City and beyond value their people.
Yeah.
They put their money, their time, their effort into their people. And so you can have a job like your great grandpa, your grandpa had, where you started the company, you ended the company, and they take care of you the whole time.
And what they'll tell you, and Martin told me the same thing, and it was the same thing. I did a big cover story on Petoskey Plastics, another big company, is that at this point they're like, we'll train the right person. We just need the right person to come in the door. We'll find a spot for them. These are all teachable skills. Yeah. Not everybody has to be the skilled manufacturer. There are people that can do a little bit more easy jobs. Get good, dedicated people in the door. We'll find a spot for them. If they're good workers, if they're hard workers, we have a job for them, and we have a good paying job for them that we want to support. Yeah. And there's a lot of that out there.
And I will do a quick plug for Northwest Michigan Works on South Garfield Avenue in Traverse City because they have career advisors and specialists, business service specialists, if you're in manufacturing, and apprenticeships where you're literally, if you're sitting back going, I want to get into that world, they will help you do it. So
all these places are hiring. Every place in town is hiring. There's never been a better time. If you want to reinvent yourself or do something different, there has never been a better time possibly in the history of this country, and I mean that fully, than right now, because everybody I talk to is desperate for staff, and they'll say, "Get him in the door, we'll figure it out." Yeah, every place.
Workforce development.
Talked me into it. I'm gonna quit.
She's out.
I'm out. Be my last currently.
I can't tell you how many. I will tell you at least once a day. At least once a day, I sit back and go, why didn't I get into the trades? I mean, I'm saying that 100%. Why didn't I become an electrician or a plumber?
They're needed. And that's the other thing, too. The demand is there, too.
Yes.
That was because of patriarchy.
Yeah.
We'll deal with that later.
Yes, I guess we'll put it on the to-do list. We still have something to do here, and that is to talk about TCAPS. Your colleague, Craig Manning, wrote a story about TCAPS and the state budget, and literally for the first time in 16 years, TCAPS going back to school, and many schools going back to schools, all schools going back to school with no state budget in place. You have some other updates about that with, some other TCAP updates, but why don't we first focus on what does it mean when, a system as large as the public education system actually goes back to school without a budget?
Yeah, it's not good. And this is a really challenging situation for the district to be in. Even after Craig's story came out this week, the TCAPS board met. And so we had a discussion again at the meeting after Craig's story where they were talking about this. And essentially, if we don't get to a budget by October 1st, then the state government is going to go into a shutdown, which means the Michigan Department of Education is going to close down, which means schools like TCAPS are not going to be getting their normal state funding allocation. And so then they would have to, depending on how long the shutdown goes, and typically in the past, these are shutdowns that would last maybe a handful of hours. everyone gets in emergency mode, and we don't want to see things shut down for a long time.
Sure.
It's not popular with the public.
That's what it was like 9 years ago, 16 years ago.
Yeah, they tend to get resolved quickly. In this case, there is a lot of pessimism and that I'm hearing from legislators, that the school districts are hearing about getting to a quick resolution. The Republicans and Democrats are very far apart on the budget. And so if we have a prolonged shutdown, what that would mean is that a district like TCAPS will start having to go into its reserves to pay for funding that it would normally be getting state funding for, things like payroll. TCAPS has about 2 months of reserves, of operational reserves that it could rely on. Some districts that have a leaner fund balance might be even less than that. You get into the possibility of schools having to close during a shutdown. So it's not great. There's also just even smaller implications, maybe smaller comparatively, but things like free universal lunch and breakfast. Right now, there's funding for that through the end of September. Depending on where the state budget ends up, we may or may not have universal free lunches after September 30th. We do still have federal funding that would cover economically disadvantaged students who qualify for the free and reduced lunch. Right now, any student can take advantage of that. So those are just some of the implications, that they're just right now, everyone's kind of on pins and needles waiting to see, your classroom split sizes. There's a lot that's impacted by this.
But this is not, so the state budget is due by, September 30th.
Typically earlier than this, yes.
But there was a July 1st deadline for the education budget. And we talked about this on Currently, in that, that is something that the legislature understood, that, schools have to have time to plan. So they changed it so that they were going to have that budget. At least that budget was going to be done by July 1st. That has been over 2 months at this point. And there's really just there's not even any sort of like agreement with that budget.
No. Yeah. It's just not in a good place. So we've definitely blown past that, which, as you mentioned, it's a statutorily required deadline. So we're just kind of in a gray zone. We'll wait to see what happens with the budget. Not promising right now, not looking great. But we'll see how the legislator moves forward. With a couple other quick updates, we'll just mention about TCAPS. This is in the story that's coming out today, Friday. As currently comes out. But one, we have trustees voting this week to do some more renovation work at Sabin over on Cass Road. So that campus it's the data center for TCAPS. What it is very importantly going to become is the headquarters for administration, who are at Glen Loomis right now. Glen Loomis needs to be vacated in the coming year because Central Grade School students are going to be moving over to Glen Loomis, so Central Grade can be reconstructed. So all the administrators are going to get kicked out of Glen Loomis. And I thought this was an interesting discussion, only because it really shows the implication of things like school shootings and how they influence every area of a school district in ways you might not even think about.
Right.
One of which is, originally what they were going to do is they were going to send some of their offices like HR and business over to Sabin. And then they have a lot of extra vacant space at Central right now because they used to have robotics there. They have a new STEM lab. So they have this space. So John Van Wagner, the superintendent, the comms department, they were all going to go over to Central High School. So they were going to kind of move everyone from Glen Loomis around the district to Sabin and Central High.
Right.
What they realized is that in the event of a school shooting, which is more likely to happen at a secondary school, like a high school,
right.
The protocol now is the building goes into immediate lockdown. If you had an emergency at Central High School and you have all of your administrative staff, your comms department, all of your key TCAPS leader locked down in that building, they are not really able to respond or communicate about an emergency. So they kind of realized pretty quickly we need to have our HQ in a building that doesn't have students in case there is a student emergency.
Wow.
So they are going to move them all to Sabin, and they need to do some renovations at the property to do that. So that'll be work that's coming soon.
Well, thank you for that update as well. And
TCAPS plug, everybody apply for that free and reduced lunch. No, I'm serious.
No, I was going to thank you. Yeah, that's a good
because
plug.
it's a misconception. Well, my kid doesn't need free or reduced lunch. The school still depends on those applications to get funding. So they really want everybody to apply for it. And everybody who has a kid in TCAPS like I do, you should have gotten an email.
Yeah.
If you don't, take a look for it, apply for those because those are very, very critical.
Yeah.
That's
critical
true.
money.
Very important.
And that is an important thing to maybe just challenge the stereotype on. Because yes, if you are a family who maybe has a higher income, or you think, oh, I don't want to, and I don't qualify, we don't need that money. He's right. Every completed application, regardless of your eligibility, is directly tied to funding that TCAPS gets for things like yearbooks, field trips, AP exams. So fill it out. In our story today in the ticker, we have the link. You can do it online. Sure. Or you can find it in any TCAPS office.
And you don't have to use the free lunch.
You don't have to use it. It's just filling out the application for any students.
And it also doesn't take anything away from students. Like last year, TCAPS had free lunch for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they had the funding for it, which is amazing. We're not in the poverty zone. We're not exactly rich either. And it's a big difference when you're not paying for lunch all the time.
Yeah.
So.
And the last thing I'll mention, Crystal, is just if folks go to the story today, check it out. Especially if you're a TCAPS parent and you have students, you want to kind of see where the district is going in the next couple of years. They approved a new strategic plan this week. It has, and Art had actually done a previous story about this a few weeks ago, and the plan that he wrote about has been adopted as of this week. We have a link to it in the story. It's pretty easy to see. It's just 5 categories of academic metrics that the district is going to be trying to go for in the next 5 years, trying to, bring up reading and math scores, staff retention, student sense of well-being, positive interactions in school buildings, things like that. They have specific metrics that they will be checking in each year to see how they're doing. So it is a concrete plan. And I think one thing that really came out of it that was a credit to Holly Bird, the late Holly Bird, Ty Schmidt, who's a newer board member, is there's a lot of metrics related to economically disadvantaged students, which is traditionally a demographic that's challenging for school districts to deal with and sometimes is neglected for that reason. Yep. They are really highlighted in this plan, and there's a real emphasis to try to get those students up as well.
That's fantastic. Before we move on to what we're all excited about this week, I do have a question about the shutdown, and maybe this is just my naivete, but can you tell me, do the lawmakers get to leave? I mean, October 1st is on a Wednesday.
Lock them in there till they figure it out.
Do they get to leave?
I don't
think they could leave. I don't think you can actually lock them in.
I'm sure they do leave, but I don't know, Beth.
Because I have a theory that it's a Wednesday, that they will stick around until Friday. Mm-hmm. And then I think they'll all want to go home, and then they'll start to work together. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
It always does seem like kind of a dog and pony show every time, but to Beth's point, maybe it's worse this time. So.
Yes, and I think they technically can leave. It is typically the case, whether on the state or federal level, that the expectation is that lawmakers will stay and work through a budget impasse, and it typically does not look good for them if they don't.
Yes.
There's real impacts, obviously, to a shutdown in many, many different ways, and it's not typically popular to let it linger for long.
Well, and if you do leave, then you don't get to vote, right?
Right, and it looks to your constituents that you're not working to actively solve the problem, which can be bad for morale.
Well, that's just not good politics, right?
Right.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on to what we are all looking forward to this week. And Art, can you tell us anything that you're looking forward to?
I'm going back down to East Lansing this weekend, which will be fun. I took my daughter Nora, who's 7 years old, to the game last weekend. We had to break our streak. Unfortunately, she's been to the end of every game, but that game started at 7:30 and it went into double overtime.
Oh my gosh.
So we left when the game at the end of regulation. So, but yeah, we're going back down. It'll be fun. Hopefully the weather is nice and I can't wait.
That's so fun. What a cool tradition.
It's a great tradition. Yeah. And she's very different from my youngest daughter, who will probably have to be 10 before I even ever try something like that. The attention spans are just different. But Nora, since she was 3 years old at her first game, and she stayed to every single end.
Wow.
That's impressive.
Incredible. Yeah.
That is incredible.
It's 3-hour games, 3.5 hours for a little kid.
Yeah.
They do it.
That's a lot.
Pro tip is this, parents. If you get one of those frozen ices, that's good for like a whole quarter because she's digging away at that there. It just takes forever. I'm like, okay. So when it starts to get tenuous, I say, let me get you one of those ices.
Yeah.
I love that.
Good advice.
How about you, Beth?
Well, I'm looking forward to a party this week and a little get together, but I'll let you talk about that maybe.
Thank you.
I was going to do my plug for Modern Bird because I really love the guys over at Modern Bird. I think it's a great restaurant, and we had a little ticker story this week that they were named by the New York Times as one of the best 50 restaurants in America.
Wow.
I have to go back.
They were the only restaurant in Michigan to make the list this year.
Wow.
And they're only a couple years old. So Andy and Emily over on West Front Street. I'm going to try to get in there this week. Now it might be a little popular, but sometimes you can sneak in and get a good bar seat and just have some delicious food and drinks there.
That's really good to know because I have not been there since they opened.
Yeah,
I haven't either.
And I really need to do that.
And they do a good job of they change up the menu. So even if you can go back and find new things. But yeah, a little plug for Modern Bird.
Let's do it. Well, I'm looking forward to my husband's very favorite time of the year. Jordan is just like me. We both love TV, huge fans. And so the Emmys come around.
Yes.
And I'm just like, let's have an Emmy party. So we are having a gathering. It's going to be an Emmys party. We're coming loaded with the, what are they called? Ballots. Thank you. I was like, can't remember. So we will have ballots and we will be, competing.
Great.
Yeah.
Beth is very good at the Oscars.
I win the Oscar ballots, and now I feel
Literally
like I
every
want to
day.
win the Emmys just to make Jordan feel bad.
You need to become friends with her on Facebook and follow the live blogging. Beth was always good about live
I do
blogging.
like to do the live blogging.
Yeah, she's very good at the live blogging. And I feel, though, this year, we never get close to beating you with the Oscars. We're better than some of our friends. Let's just call out, like Gary doesn't watch anything.
Yeah.
Gatsky.
Yeah.
Gatsky.
And Aaron, sometimes gets things wrong too. Like that's okay. It's okay. But I do feel like with the Emmys, we might have you.
Okay, we'll see.
I'm just going to tell you.
We'll do an update on currently.
It's funny, you guys, you talk about TV. I just had an incidental thought the other day about the last great block of network television, which was NBC Thursday night when it had Community, The Office, 30 Rock, and what am I missing?
Community, The Office, 30 Rock, and Parks and Recreation.
Parks and Recreation, of course.
The producer from behind.
The voice
And I can remember when Parks and Recreation finally went off the air all those years later. That was like the last vestige of like when you had to watch. It was like must-see TV. Like you'd gather your friends, you'd sit down, you'd watch network television for God's sakes, and it was so good.
Television.
I mean, that was a real thing. Thursday nights were must-see
show,
TV.
The paper. It's disappointing.
I like it.
It's fine. It's just fine. I needed it to be more. I like the little Easter eggs in there.
All right,
you
let's get you to
also
bed, Grandpa.
didn't like the second season of Severance.
No, I worry about Severance. I worry that it's going down the lost path.
We can't.
I think it's amazing. It's the best. The first season of Severance was the best season of TV I've seen in years.
Yeah.
I worry about it going losty. Stay focused for me now.
I feel like
news
we're
update,
going
Art is
down
wrong
the
about
lost
this, though.
No, I just listen. Don't end up providing more questions than you answered. Just
We will
do
figure
that.
out the goats.
We are going to
Okay.
figure it out. Yes, we are.
Too many different things.
Well,
going on
big thanks to
there.
Beth Milligan and to Art Bukowski for yet another great show. Be sure to subscribe to the show on all the platforms. You can do it real easy. Crystal, CHRISTAL, Frost.com. You can follow us on social media. You can subscribe to Currently with Crystal Frost, literally wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch the full show on YouTube and Facebook. Currently is a Compass local podcast produced by Pancake Boy Productions.
Pancake
Big thanks
Boy.
to our lead supporter, Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings, in addition to the wonderful West Shore Bank and the Coin Slot. We'll see you next week on Currently.